Hi everybody. Welcome back. I want to apologize first up is that the we were gonna try to be on a week to 10-day schedule for Ronic history episodes, and I was doing pretty good. I have most of the notes written, they're just sitting in a Google Doc. I think I have like three more slides ish to get through, but complications came up on scheduling from for this next recording session, so we're gonna push it back just a bit. It shouldn't be more than a couple more days. I do apologize for that, but that's why I'm recording this, is to give you a little something to have while we're working on the next Moronic History episode. So, I wanted to talk about what's in the title. Barbenheimer. I think almost everybody's heard of this because right now they're the first and second highest grossing movies at the moment, like this cycle, but I wanted to talk about it because I thought it'd be interesting. So, first off, I saw Barbie first, so I want to talk about Barbie first. Barbie wouldn't have appealed to me, but a group of my friends were going and they were like, "Hey, do you want to go with us?" And I said, "Yeah." So we went, and I really enjoyed myself. I thought it was a very fun movie. Obviously, Barbie wasn't a very like oh, I'm obviously Barbie isn't going to be a super serious movie that's trying to tell a very complex story, and I knew that going in. But I think for what it was trying to be, that was just an uplifting and critique of both what Barbie was. I'm gonna switch. What Barbie was and what people thought it was going to be. I think it's a very good movie for that. I think it really shows why a lot of people disliked Barbie, especially in the younger generations, because it does set a lot of bad stuff up as far as thoughts for what you have to be a woman. And I think exploring the Ken's side of it, where if you say the name Barbie, everybody knows what you're talking about, and you're going to think of the toy. But if you say Ken, you're probably just going to think of either a guy you know named Ken, or you're going to have a picture of a basic white boy. Because there is no Ken without Barbie, right? I think the movie explored its themes very well, and I'm not a really good critic for cinematography. I don't know the first thing about it, so I can't really critique it, but I think it was well shot and the sets were really good. It wasn't bad paced at all. I think it moved from plot point to plot point very well, very fluidly, and didn't have any major dragging points. It's a very good movie. I don't really know how to say it other than that. I don't think that's a very hot take. Um, the other movie that obviously caught my interest more. I'm a history geek. Obviously, this movie is going to catch my interest more, and the other movie is Oppenheimer. So I want to eventually do like a full breakdown of Oppenheimer because I think he's a really interesting dude. But as far as the movie goes, I think, from what I know about the story of Oppenheimer, I think this movie told a very good story. There have been little critiques about, I think there was critiques about one of the American flags having 50 stars instead of 49, and how, oh yeah, spoilers. I'll put that in the start. Spoilers. How close were Oppenheimer and Einstein really? But if that's the best critiques out of a movie, you're doing pretty good. I think the story Oppenheimer tells is a very good one. It dives into the more political side of both the construction and the use of the bomb. That kind of goes under the radar, especially here in the United States, because if you don't know, here in the States, our like when we're taught about the bomb, we're just taught that during the war, a bunch of scientists split the atom and they made the nuclear bomb. But it doesn't, and then they just say, we dropped it on Japan because we had to, because if we didn't, it would have lost millions more lives. And that's just not a very nuanced point of view on that, and I think this movie does that brilliantly. both from the side of constructing the bomb, where Oppenheimer's first thought is very, like, one that most people can get behind. If we don't get the bomb, the Nazis are going to get the bomb. And what's worse than the United States having it? Well, yeah, Hitler. So that makes sense. But then what happens after? You know, the Germans surrender and the bomb isn't ready, but now Japan's the only enemy we're fighting. Do you still use it? And in the mind of Truman, yeah, you use it, so you don't have to invade Japan. But was that justified? Because that's not the only thing that was in play. One of the justifications is that to invade the Japanese home islands would have been devastating for both Americans and Japanese, which might have been true. But the other major play was that the Americans wanted to show off that they had the bomb and show to the what they were presuming, and they were right, to be their new rival, the Soviets, that they have this magnificent weapon that won't be an issue. Obviously, the Soviets already knew about it because they had spies in the Manhattan Project, but whatever. Those are the justifications for the bombs. I think it opens the door to a new conversation of not new conversation, obviously, but reopen the conversation of were the bombings justified. And I know this is a technically a review of Oppenheimer, but I want to talk about that after we talk about it. I think that the what would you say? The parallels between Oppenheimer and Prometheus are very well done. I think that's very good. That try to show that. Because if you don't know, Prometheus, he was a Titan, I believe, took fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, and for this he was chained to a rock for all eternity. I think that very much parallels Oppenheimer's story, as said in the movie, because Oppenheimer takes he didn't discover nuclear fission, but he took its potential as a weapon and gave it to humanity. It's really well done. I think it really shows the gravity of both how it affected him and how it affected the world. I have to admit, I didn't know what happened after the war for Oppenheimer for obvious reasons, because that's where a lot of his story stops. I should have read more, but I didn't. He, he wasn't very liked because during his younger years and even in his later years, he was a he was on the left, and to an American, that's like treason of the highest order. He was sabotaged and tried for no, he wasn't tried. It was his security clearance was up and up for renewal, and he had to make the case. He was found to be a loyal citizen, but it was he wasn't granted security clearance, and that kind of destroyed his reputation. All of the work of Louis Strauss. Again, I'm gonna put spoilers at the start because this ruins like the whole suspense of the movie. Um, Louis Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr. I didn't know that going in, so it was kind of fun to see his face. Is very good. I think his motivations are very, if not understandable, you can definitely see where they're coming from because he's a politician at heart and he wants to grow up the ladder, and Oppenheimer is just kind of standing in his way, and he's very vindictive. It's a very beautifully told story, and one of my favorite scenes is that throughout the movie, Louis Strauss blames Oppenheimer for turning the scientists against him, especially Albert Einstein. And we get this scene from Strauss's point of view first of Oppenheimer going to talk to Einstein again. And when Einstein walks past Strauss, he doesn't say anything. He just ignores him. So in Strauss's mind, Oppenheimer had just turned Einstein against him. And throughout the whole movie, you're under this assumption that Oppenheimer had manipulated Einstein or told him something. But then finally, you get to the scene where it's told from Oppenheimer and Einstein's point of view. And Einstein is basically just talking to Oppenheimer about what's going to happen for you. Because Oppenheimer had told Einstein, the science you have brought about, you don't understand now, and you don't understand where it's going to go. He told him that. And now, Einstein is telling Oppenheimer the same. Oppenheimer opened the door to nuclear weaponry. But he doesn't know, and he won't be a part of where it goes from here on out. And I think that's a beautiful. I think it's a beautifully put line, and it just goes to show that Strauss wasn't as important as he thought he was. And as far as I know, Strauss was the first cabinet member to be denied ascension since like 1925. Another thing I didn't know until I looked it up, Einstein died 12 years before Oppenheimer. That hurts my brain. Anyways, so I said I would get back to it because I think it's a very interesting topic, but the bombings of the bombings. Yes. I think the case for bombing Germany was much higher because the lives lost in the bombings would have paled in comparison to the lives lost both, not even counting the war, but in the Holocaust. I think the argument for bombing them was much higher, and I think the argument for bombing Japan was less a strategic one and more a political one. I think in the context of World War II, the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima were unjustified. But looking back at it from now, I think the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have saved more lives than they took. And I'll explain. When a government gets a new weapon, they want to use it. And if two governments have it, they're going to use it against each other. And I think what Hiroshima and Nagasaki really showed the world is that when we use these bombs, this isn't just a new weapon in our arsenal. This isn't just a new toy for us to throw around. This is a new age. We are walking down a door that could end up destroying us. And I think that this was well shown. And I think that it was tragic that those people died at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But the deaths there stopped an even bigger war. Would nuclear war have started if both sides didn't know what the bomb could do? Maybe not. But I think taking that chance is a much harder one. And another thing from the movie is that he wanted to create a new age of peace. And for all of the bombs, negatives and downsides, and the ability to destroy humanity, a peace like this that we are currently or were currently in was almost unheard of. Obviously, there were still wars, and there was fighting, and there was death, and there was tragedy. That's awful, and it happens. But there wasn't a war between two major powers for over. It still hasn't happened. The only war that springs to mind that would be closer to a World War II style war is between Russia and Ukraine. 80 years is a long time. And two global powers still haven't duked it out. If you put the United States and the Soviet Union in any other point in time, 1700s, 1800s, and the early part of the 1900s, they would have fought. Two superpowers who are diametrically opposed, they would have fought, and one of them would have come out on top in a war. But the bombs put that off the table because it changed how things had to be played. Because if you fight them, and if they or you launch the bomb, it's all over. I think overall, the effects of I think nuclear bombs can only really be judged in the future, only because if we never use the bombs, then they are completely justified. They are completely understandable, and us having them has only done good. If we do use them, then it is the exact opposite. Um, and I'm just glad that Oppenheimer has opened up this new dialogue tree in my head. So, yeah, that is my kind of spiel about Oppenheimer and Barbie, or Barbenheimer, and I'll probably talk more about it on the next episode of the podcast, and I might talk about it more in a more in-depth review of both the life of Oppenheimer and the movie itself to see if there's any inaccuracies that I could see. But for now, that's all I have to say on it. Um, Thank you so much for watching this and being patient with the next episode of the podcast. Should come out sometime next week. Next week, as in like next weekend. But thank you all so much for watching this. I highly recommend, if you haven't watched Barbie or Oppenheimer, and you still sound very interested, especially if you like history, and go see Barbie too. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.